It's perfect. All right, well, now that we're all here, now, do you want to throw the switch? No. I left him a message just to kind of encourage, but I don't know that he's out of the woods yet.
Well, it's on.
Oh. Hope we didn't say anything controversial. Yeah. Okay, should I wait for the camera to show, or does that matter?
I don't know.
Is there somebody up there?
There's somebody up there, yeah.
All right, well, I won't read the agenda. Meeting of the Littleton Finance Committee on Tuesday, September 24th. Our agenda, we have three organizations, town organizations before us that have either upcoming or potential future warrant articles with spending involved or financial implications. First off is the Littleton 300 Committee, and I see their chair, Jack Homer, is here, and in a moment we'll have Jack give us a little description of what's been going on with Littleton 300 and the background behind the warrant article request, spending request. And then Silas and Scott are here from Littleton Electric Light Water Department to speak to a pretty complicated but exciting article involving transfer station property and with other potential financial implications. And then thirdly, I see that we have Megan Ward and Rich Crowley from the Sewer Feasibility Committee, and while that article has been pulled from the fall special, they're good enough to come in and give us an update of where things stand with the ongoing process. After that, we will entertain a little discussion about what we want to do in terms of the input we had at our last meeting from the department heads on the initiation of the budget process, with an eye toward our meeting next Monday night with the selectmen on their priorities in the budget process and those sort of things. There's a few topical items that I know Finance Director Bonnie Halston has given us, and so I assume she wants to make some sort of report. Financial policies update, we've sent some of the last minute. We did get a copy of the updated financial policies draft. And thank Steve and Bonnie for that. Our subcommittee, the working group, hasn't had a chance to meet as yet, but I did post a meeting for Thursday, so we will have a chance to review it as a working group prior to Monday night. And we do have a couple of sets of outstanding minutes, which we can attend to later on too. So, unless anybody objects, that's the intended agenda. And if I can ask you to come forward, Jack, you're first up.
Where would you like me to sit?
Wherever you're comfortable, but preferably the front row. You don't understand, though. Oh, thank you. Thank you. All right. I trust everyone got a copy of the brief memo Jack had provided in terms of the general parameters of your spending. It's important to keep in mind that, well, I'll let Jack do the talking, but it's, a lot of your spending is going to be funded through private fundraising.
That's correct, yeah. Now, basically, when we first came to the town, we talked about a $200,000 budget. It has not changed a bit. Basically, I think that's what you probably have in front of you, the 200,000. 15 for the opening and closing, 15 for the picnic, 100,000 for the parade, and 50,000 for the fireworks and all. The remaining 20,000 it goes to the legacy, and that's what we want to leave to the town from the 300. And that's the most important thing. We have two basically fundraising avenues. One, we have formed the Friends, which is not a town organization, but they can do things like hold auctions, do things, raffles and things like that. They intend to, and I met with the chairman this noon, they intend to raise $100,000 for us. The first thing is a big raffle that they're having for Patriots tickets, and then on November 9th, they're having a big auction that they consider those two things will come close to doing their 100,000. If we need more money from them so that they reach that, they will do another auction next week. But that's the 100,000. The other 100,000 is in terms of the town, the committee itself, and our big thing of the banners. You've seen 5 of them around town now. We're in the process of just now going out to, because we've got all the ducks in a row, we know what they're doing, thanks to the light department, erecting these, and And basically, along the route, the parade route, the main route in town, those will be $1,000. They will be up from approximately March or April next year to October, November of next year. And then the person who buys them gets them at the end in as-is condition. But that's our big fundraiser, along with just asking for money. And that's what we're in the process of doing now. We intend to have that all done by November 1st. We've got various people taking various segments. We're looking for the large ones, the big donors, the sponsors, whatever you call it. We have one already. This is basically a $20,000 fee. We have one, and we've got 4 more. 2 look very, very good. We're just about ready to put the lid on them. But this takes negotiation because we have to give them the bang for the buck. We have to give them advertising. We have to come out with brochures and everything else. So we have to give them, and we're going to customize to everybody. We're going to be very, if a real small business wants a banner, yes, we're going to stretch. We're probably not going to charge them $1,000. So we do have some flexibility in that we can work with people to do everything. Basically, we feel very confident that we will come up with the money to handle what we said we would do without asking the town. But the town fathers and Keith and all have said, well, what if you don't and everything else? Why don't we put a fail-safe in there? And that is what we're talking about for the town meeting. They gave us the figure of $50,000. That's fine. Understanding that by November 4th, I'll be able to tell exactly if we need any of that. If we don't, and the town still wants to go forward with that money, we would put it right into the legacy. Because we have a grocery list of the legacy committee is fantastic. And we have a grocery list of things.
I'm on the legacy.
Yeah, but that's okay. I wasn't even going to mention that. Jack, you're better than I am. I haven't told you. I learned from you. Basically, they've come up with a grocery list of things that,
Paul's all about spending money, we know that.
And so we would just like to leave as much as we possibly can to the town. And, that's, we will be able to speak.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'll elaborate a little bit.
Yeah, go ahead. You're fine. I heard you do.
We've got kind of a moving target list of ideas that have been brought up, and some of the traditional things, new signage in the entrance to the town, taking use of local stones to make big markers, and some activity at the common area, which has to get all its proper approvals from selectmen, planning board, etc. But then a lot of times, with some of the ideas that have come up, no sooner does an idea come forward than a funding source is identified for it, and it quickly dissolves. So it's a bit of a moving target. Part of that was supporting the Historic Society with their re-edition of the Littleton Town History book, and as I say, some of those things get funded by independent means shortly after they're identified. So it's kind of a little bit of a moving target, but I think the common feeling in your conversations with Keith, the selectmen, the rest is we want to find ourselves in a position where we have this opportunity at special town meeting to put aside reserve for either what will probably realistically be about $20,000 in legacy costs, and then a reserve in case the fundraising does not support the private fundraising doesn't support the general activities of the Littleton 300 Committee. So it's Article 5. I understand this is not a firm list, but I guess the powers that be determined a pretty brief article was all that was required. Keith drafted that, did he?
Yes, he did, yeah.
I don't know if you have anything to add to Bonnie on that, whether this...
Thank you for what you did. Yeah.
Okay. So, any questions for Jack and Littleton 300 Committee?
Who decides if they don't need the money, whether or not the town actually gives it to the legacy or not, or whether it just stays in the town funds? Who decides that?
It would be appropriated by town meeting. So for now, the funds would be appropriated to the 350th committee. I'm sorry, the 300th committee. And at the end of the celebration, then it would be further appropriated to another fund.
So,
for legacy.
once it's appropriated to the committee has full discretion
Correct.
on how to spend it, what to spend it on, when to spend it.
Correct.
So, we're asking the town to go on faith that the committee doesn't go on a big spending bender. I mean, so that there's some left at the end if, in
Correct.
fact.
Now, they would still have to follow the procurement laws that are in the policy set by the town. So any contract between $5,000 and $25,000 would have to be approved by the town administrator. Any contract greater than that would have to be approved by the Board of Selectmen.
And, for the record, I need to offer, as Jack knows, through the Legacy Committee, to put together a specific list, knowing that it was changeable, and Keith didn't think that was necessary. So, we do have a list that's...
That's Keith's town, so. If he doesn't have
That's
to-
not how we left it. I just said, we base the offer, there's nothing secretive about it. It's all now a public record anyways, the items that the Legacy Committee has, been bouncing off both the Selectmen and the Littleton 300 Committee.
Okay.
Just one thing, at Monday's selectmen meeting, one of the selectmen floated the idea of maybe doubling the number to 100,000, just because, money's free. And I'm assuming we're staying with the 50?
50 is the recommendation.
That was the last, I heard the same thing, this additional 50, I heard today from 2 or 3 different people, what are you doing? And I said, I don't know, I knew it as 50.
Yeah,
They started at 20, it went to 50, and then 100 was thrown out, so.
well, actually, a higher number was in play at one point, because one of the recommendations of the Legacy Committee is to use the occasion of the 300th anniversary to do another master plan process, which was close to 20 years out on the last one. But that seems to have its own life anyway, through discussions between the planning board and the selectmen, so we're not including that as part of the laundry list here. Otherwise, it would have been a bigger, it would have been a standalone article, but it would have been associated with that process.
Okay.
But it's not here.
Great. Go master plan 7.
Yeah. Well, we were just using the occasion to remind folks, and it's probably not a bad time to put a marker in the ground.
Totally agree.
Okay.
Totally agree.
All right. Any further questions for Jack or on the article? Thank you for coming out.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right, I was just going to suggest we send somebody up to see if we're going to be live, but we are, so that's good. All right. Littleton Electric Light and Water Department.
Good evening, for the record. My name is Sadis Stanos. I'm the general manager, and with me tonight is Scott Edwards, our assistant general manager. This is a fairly fairly complicated, yet very, very exciting proposal that putting in front of you, and there'll be many parts to it. The first thing I'm passing out is the article, if you don't have it, as well as something that Scott will discuss with you, the highlights of the solar and the power supply part of this. There's basically 3 parts of this proposal that are all in one very extensive article. The first part, and the 3 players are the Littleton Light Department, the Town of Littleton, and the Littleton Water Department. And it's both a revenue sharing plan and an exceptional opportunity to get some sustainable resources for the community, to be used by the community, as well as some resources for the light department, to be used by the light department to help all ratepayers with the future of electric rates. And with that said, we'll start with the first component, which Scott will give you, which is highlighted in the second handout. Scott.
Okay, thanks for having us in tonight. This all kind of bubbled up probably about a year ago at the light department. Because the changes in the power pool, we've found that the capacity and transmission rates that we've been charged have increased dramatically in New England. And it used to be a fraction of our costs, and now it's becoming a major portion of our costs. So, trying to think ahead and keep our rates, as low as we can, we started kind of brainstorming, like, how could we kind of beat the system? And one of the ways to do it is, on every month, you hit your peak demand, it's just 1 hour of that month that they use. And that's how they kind of charge you for these charges. And they're basically charging us for the New England transmission system and all the generators being online. So we started looking around, and we actually had someone come in, and they did a study and looked at putting a generator, we call it a peak shaving generator, it can be either natural gas or diesel, that would run probably 6 to 8 hours a month. And you kind of have to figure out when your peak hour is going to be, but with weather forecasting now and having everything online, it's not too difficult. So we kind of looked at that, and we looked at all the economics of that and all the payback, and that was very attractive. So then, Savis and I have been kind of kicking around, where would we want to put one of these things? And it's not a big package, it's probably 40 by 15. If you've been to the HP building on Taylor Street, they have 3 of them sitting down there as emergency generators. It's an enclosed package that sits on a concrete pad. So then we started thinking about kind of combining it maybe with a solar array. And that's when the town landfill, we started looking at. And then, said, well, hey, they're putting one in Acton, went over and visited that one. And we have good relationships with the municipal department over there, so we talked to them about what they were doing over there. They actually had a developer put the system in. They didn't pay for it, and they're buying power from it. And then they just lease the land that they're using. So it's a really accepted use of a landfill in Massachusetts. The DEP has to approve it, but they've been giving out special permits because there really isn't too much you can do on a capped landfill these days. So it seems like a solar array is a good, pretty good project. So that's when we kind of started looking at both of them together. And the advantages, like I said, to us would be to get the peak generator in a place like a transfer station landfill where it's kind of away from most residential areas. I think it's in a good area. Electrically, it's in a good area for us. And that basically will help to reduce our costs, and I've highlighted some of the estimates that we have in there. And then also, we can generate, energy with this solar array. And, the advantage of that is it's renewable energy. And also, you get solar energy credits that you can sell. We, as a municipal light department in Massachusetts, are not required to have those. The private investor-owned utilities are, National Grid, NSTAR. They have to actually just buy these credits. They don't have to necessarily buy the output of the power, but they have to buy the credits, which actually are more expensive than power from these wind and solar and hydro. So we could sell those credits, plus produce on-peak energy, which is great for solar because it's, energy on the pole is the most expensive from, 10 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon, and that's when these things are on. So, we did we had a feasibility study done about 6 months ago for our generator, our peak reducing generator. So we have a pretty good handle on those costs. We just recently now have signed with a company right here in Littleton, an engineering company, to do a feasibility study for the solar array. How many panels could we get in there? What would the cost be? What would the output be? What's the impact? That sort of thing. That should be done in about 2 weeks. Okay, so we'll have a lot of those financial answers. So we'll have those 2 pieces of the puzzle. I went and sat down with Keith and Roland Bernier, Marin, and Jim Clyde were there, and just talked about, would the town be acceptable to the solar array? We kind of kicked around, maybe the output from the solar, the energy would be used for town buildings. We don't really know the exact value of that yet because we don't know how much we're going to get yet, depending on how many panels we can put in. But we kicked around maybe lease payments or part of the selling of the solar racks and things like that. So that started kind of bubbling up. we met with our commissioners, and, they said, sure, let's get all the numbers and start looking at it. And then, then Savas got started with Keith on this 2-page warrant article.
Right.
To try to tie, we actually started looking at 2 single warrant articles, the solar.
It takes 2 pages of language to make money, but
Yeah.
only a short paragraph to spend it.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's the
yeah,
other end of
yeah,
that.
you're exactly right. It's, you gotta figure out like where all the money's gonna go. But yeah, we were gonna do 2 articles, and then, we had a meeting and said, maybe 1 article so that they're tied together. So, Savas has really been involved with that as far as, where that's gonna go. But it was good timing because we can get on the special town meeting. And we can, if the selectmen approve it and our commission approves it, and the town meeting approves it, then we can start to design and really get started on it and not have to wait until the spring meeting.
I like this better.
So it was good timing. And it is a complicated issue. There's a lot of kind of moving parts right now. Within a few weeks, we're going to have some good answers about the solar, which will really help us start closing some of the holes up. So that's kind of where we're at now.
From your intended calendar, it said that you were due to meet with the selectmen on the 9th. Did you meet with the selectmen yet on this?
We didn't, we met with our commission, and then what we did is we had we crafted the article.
Right.
And then, because they were meeting on the 16th, they had it, that was like the closing date.
Right.
So then they approved.
You're obviously aware of it, it's on the warrant. But,
Yeah, then they approved it onto the warrant. So then now we have to, we've got some work to do to get our ducks in a row numbers,
Okay.
The key is, what Scott said is that we have a 2-week to 3-week window where we're gonna have an estimate of the value of the solar output. That's a critical component, I'll get into that now. That allows us to come up with the pro forma, the financials of all this, and we'll talk about that. The value of this project, and we'll call it the landfill peak shaving project, to the light department is unequivocal. The value of the solar component to give it a sustainability quotient and a green initiative, and the value of that back to the town is what has to be negotiated. So everything here is in flux based on what the pro forma comes out with over the next few weeks. We feel very confident it's going to be a very significant pro forma. And then the negotiation of the exchange that we're going to talk about next will happen first and foremost between the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Land Water Commissioners. And if they come to consensus on the value of this pro forma and the value back to the community in straight cash, if you will, because of the cell tower component we'll talk about next, then it goes forward at town meeting. So we are a little bit ahead of the curve here, because really, we really should have that negotiation first, but because, for example, this committee is meeting tonight, and they want an overview, and the Sustainability Committee is meeting in a few nights, and so I'll go visit with them and just give them the overview. There's a lot of moving parts, and here's where the moving parts become a little complicated. What Scott has gone over is very technical, it's all engineering based, it's his expertise, but at the end of the day, when the pro forma is done by him, it's pretty straightforward. Here's how much it costs, here's the payback, here's the value of the output, and clearly we already know the value of the peak shave area, so for all ratepayers. Our proposal is as follows. We're looking at preliminarily to give the town the full output of the solar panels, okay? That's one of the concepts. And that may be between $75,000 and $150,000 a year. Now, that would become an offset to the town's municipal electric bills. But at the end of the day, it's cash for the community. It's cash for the selectmen and the finance committee and all the boards and committees in town to do with what they wish. And because of the cell tower component, which we'll talk about next, with the water department's getting involved, the town meeting article includes some language to give the open space group that money back, okay? That is an important component, though, because we need to know the value of the solar panels in terms of output to make sure that that works. If not, there's other ways of doing it. What the town then will get out of this, on first brush, is the solar output as reduction in electric rates is what we're proposing. What we get out of it, meaning all ratepayers of Littleton and Boxborough, the things that Scott spoke about, peak shaving capabilities, transmission capabilities, and the selling of the RECs, which will affect everyone's rate. Does it mean you get a reduction in the lowest rates in New England right now? Don't know that. It means that we're going to fight the significant increases in electric rates that are coming due to these transmission and peaking issues. Okay. Now we put on the water hat. I give you all the water components. This could also go on water department property. What we're offering is to put it on town property and give the town the benefit, but ask the town, in the same article, to give the water department, for capital improvements, the value of the unencumbered revenues from the cell towers, which is the money that basically we're giving to the town through town meeting votes for the last 20 years. Given the fact that we now have a new financial mechanism, that being the CPA funding, that wasn't there 20 years ago, the use of cell tower revenues as a method of buying open space, it has lost some of its luster. Granted, it's still something that is available, it's still something that's positive, but what we're offering is a trade-off. The value of the solar output in exchange for the water department to take unencumbered revenues only, which right now amount to about $75,000 a year, which right now is not going to various open space projects. That's a fairly reasonable estimate. That the water department be allowed to manage that on our land in exchange for another revenue stream that might be more significant. And that's really the essence. Why? Water department is facing some significant capital needs. We've raised rates once, we'd like to raise them again. And I point to a few graphs. The first graph is, in this day and age, is this graph, look at it. In this day and age, we are not allowed to support or to encourage people to use water. As you know, we have a summer conservation program. We have a summer conservation program for two reasons. One, on those hottest days in the summer, if everyone's using water and verifying using water to a high level, we might not have enough water for a few hours, in the sense that you can't always meet your capacity. But on top of that, we have a very aggressive and active community that has what's called a conservation program. So our per capita consumption in the area is the second lowest in the area. And it's only lowered by air, which air has very small house lots. And so in retrospect, if you base it on size of house lots, Littleton really per capita is one of the lowest users of water in this part of the state, which is nothing but a benefit to the state. But as a utility now, a straight utility, taking off the conservation sustainability hat, we're losing revenue. As our rates go, as our costs go up, the amount of money we're getting from ratepayers goes down because people use less water, which is great. So we're faced with that dilemma. And we are meeting our 65 per capita rule. The state mandates that we have to meet 65 gallons per person per day, residential, and we're well below that, and we'll continue to advocate for that. But that's one dilemma that water departments face, and we face it in spades. The next dilemma, without any further bond issuance, the second graph, we see the full impact of the treatment plant at well number 2 coming to fruition in 2015. Right now, we're about 380,000, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
No, it's okay, Betsy, we have plenty. We're at about $380,000 per year in bond costs, capital costs. And for the first year, it goes up to over $700,000. It's a first-year impact of the treatment plan. And why it goes down to 500 and change after that is because some of our other bonds are over. The treatment plant bonds are over. So we have a real significant impact the first year. And then we still have a reasonable impact after that.
Is this calendar 2015, or is this fiscal?
No, the water will be fiscal.
So this is actually next year, in the year 2014.
Is it 14, 15, and 15, 16? I always get confused, but
So next July?
after next July.
That's what we're
Yeah,
asking,
yeah. After next July, it'll come into effect.
This coming July would be 15, right?
Right.
Well,
So-
we'll bond in 14, first payment due 15.
Right.
Okay,
The
so
treatment plant's not done yet.
The next budget
Right.
cycle.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So, but again, and we're putting money away, but we aren't putting enough money away. So we're looking for any and all sources of revenue, and we believe that the unencumbered cell tower money should be allowed through town meeting in support of boards like yourselves, the selectmen, the newly formed sustainability committee. Hopefully, we'll all come to grips with the understanding of the needs of the water department and the water resources community, and giving us a chance to get some money back into our coffers to help pay for capital improvements. the Land and Water Department have been, I think you all can agree, have been exceptional supporters of town initiatives throughout the years. The Water Department just needs a little bit of help, and this is a way for the town to allow us to manage ourselves a little bit better. We still gonna have rate increases, but this is a way of, it becomes revenue neutral, but there are gonna be some opportunities for new cell tower, not new cell tower sites, but there are some open positions that might be coming to fruition. All we're asking for is those monies that are unencumbered be allowed to be returned or earmarked for the water department to help in our capital improvements, and we have a revenue source for that, that being a certain amount of the money from the use of the solar panels. The actual amounts will be worked out over the next few weeks and will be negotiated before town meeting.
Okay, let me just.
That's enough.
Okay,
For
but
me-
let me just frame what the article asks, if I, or suggest what my reading of it is, and then, a lot of that is in background about how the project works, but specifically the article, when you get down to the therefore paragraph, it's authorization for the lease of property. Secondly is the direction of funds to the water department surplus fund. And then thirdly, the unencumbered revenues from the telecommunications to, well, I guess that's just those two asks, right? Yeah, basically it's two pieces. So the details of your negotiation with the town would effectively happen between you and the selectmen.
Correct.
Right, okay, so, all right, just to be clear.
Those details have not been affected yet because of the fact that.
But the ask of the town is to authorize the lease of the property
Correct.
at the transfer station and to the creation and the direction of those funds to the water surplus.
No, not those funds, the cell tower funds.
Right, all right, well, I should have been clearer on that, yes.
And,
The- as it says here-
and the direction of those, of that payment stream, I believe a certain amount of it has been earmarked already for open space, for the CPA to make up the difference.
All right.
And that's something
And when we
that's-
say unencumbered funds, we mean the encumbered funds are the funds that are already anticipated that are earmarked for a specific open space project that
Yes.
we've already funded.
And I did not give you a copy of that because
Yep.
Bonnie's already given you that.
I'm doing that for the benefit of the people who may not
Exactly.
understand.
Yes, yeah. So that all monies that have been earmarked for open space, the bond issuance on those open space projects, the Howell property, the Morrison property, the conservation restriction on the
Proudy.
Crowley property and other small amounts, all those do not get affected. That revenue stream continues. Just the monies that aren't encumbered, which amount to about $72,000 to $75,000 a year. They may go up, they may go down. They may go up a little bit to start possibly, they could because of increases, but they could go down as well if cell tower people leave the
So
site.
roughly around 70,000?
75,000. Bonnie, that's a good number, a safe number.
No, it was, excuse me, it was my understanding that there was also a piece of this that accomplished what Keith was trying to accomplish by putting a lump sum into the CPC to maximize the match.
Correct.
Now, is,
That would be the
is that-
75,000 of the money coming back to the town would go into, the match for that unencumbered that's going to the water department
okay, so that
would come back
in.
from the light department, from the solar piece to
Right.
go into the
So, okay,
CPC.
so that the CPC gets the incremental money so that we get the incremental match
Correct.
that we were trying to get.
Right.
So
But that's not,
And then-
that's not
and then-
provided for in this language.
It is.
It is? Well, where is that? then?
In the whereas, I believe it says, and the first $75,000 goes to.
The sixth whereas.
All those whereas, it says
Well,
specifically.
the whereases don't have the force of law, they just lay out the case. It's the therefore is the matter.
I'm reminded.
Right?
No, but it,
I don't dispute anybody's intention here, I just want to be clear that I don't think that provision is accounted for in the final paragraph.
that's all I wanted to make sure, is that it was covered.
The expectation is, and that's something we
Okay,
can.
that's important.
We're gonna give you, we're gonna afford you access to those monies, how the town spends it, they want to refund the CPA or fund the CPA with those monies is their prerogative.
And let me guess, the reason that's probably not here is because that money doesn't exist yet, and there'll be a subsequent article at probably next year's annual town meeting about that?
The authorization to make deposits into CPC is part of this town meeting. That needs to be approved by the state prior to
Okay.
actually doing that.
Is that a separate article on this warrant?
Yeah.
Where I didn't see that, what is that? What article is that? I know these changes,
It's the one before.
probably right after it? Nope,
Is-
of course not.
Oh, Article 8 on this.
Article 8, so it's right before it, okay?
It's the one before it.
All right, Community Preservation Act Amendment. And what is the detail of that amendment?
That just allows the town to appropriate additional monies into the community preservation account from other sources. than
Above and
the
beyond
levy.
the property tax levy?
Correct, up to the 3%. So we have a 1% surcharge, we can go up to that 3% limit.
So that's the tool that allows the town to take the differential
Correct.
and replenish the
And we
fund.
would have to do that at every town meeting annually thereafter. So it's still, by vote of town meeting.
That's where I get confused, because, first I think, kudos to all of you for this, it sounds like a wonderful idea. It does seem like it's two related but very separate things. We could do all of this and, other than change what happens to the cell tower money and where the solar income goes, we could do everything but that as one thing. And it's a wonderful thing. And then separately, and it feels to me like it really is separate, say where the money from the solar energy goes and what happens with the cell tower money. Those seem like very separable things.
They are. Oh, I'm sorry.
Just give me a sec, because, and it seems that CPA, while it's also wonderful, is not exactly the same as buying money for open space. So,
Understood. Yeah.
so I think if I put my
Good point.
open space purchasing hat on, I might say, wow, I might get some less money out of this.
All the money that is being earmarked now, though, is going through CPA for open space, I believe. But that's just my opinion.
There
It's-
is a mathematical way that we can back into this for CPC. You must appropriate at least 10% of all revenues into open space funding. You can appropriate more than that. So we could figure out the money that's going,
Up to 80%,
10,
correct.
10, and then 70. We can take part of that 70 that goes into that other category that includes recreation and everything else. And we could figure out, well, if we're putting 72,000 in that came from this fund, we want to make sure that at least that 72 gets into the open space bucket. And we can do that.
Okay, just because I'll say, during the week, I got an email from Conservation, I think someone on the Conservation Commission, I'm not sure, and they said, am I losing money out of this? And I said, I don't think so,
No.
but I'm trying
We
to
would do
understand.
that calculation annually. We would need to do it annually. You must put at least 10% in, but you can put in, any amount.
And then the whole idea is to get more in the match too, that comes from the state.
Yeah,
So
absolutely, yeah,
it
yeah.
compounds
Right.
pretty well.
The other item
Brian-
is part of the CPC also.
You're correct in that it starts two articles. The reason why they're combined was because they are linked. It's a three-party agreement, and they are linked. And rather than us being excited over really what is
You excitable?
need, no. For 32 years, I'm still living like a child. Yeah, he's the calm one. The solar, the peak shaving component is really very, very exciting on its own, and I wish we could bring that forward on its own from perspective of what it really can do for the community and have a chance to have its day in court, if you will. But wearing my water hat, the revenue needs for the water department cannot be shoved behind on this thing. That's why they've been brought forward to combine the two, so that we don't approve something that really is from a perspective of what this is going to do in New England. And, this is the first of its kind in New England, this opportunity that we're affording the community and ourselves. But we can't let the poor cousin fall by the wayside. That's why they've been combined, and it was Keith's suggestion, I think it was Tom Harrington's suggestion, that they be combined so that the link, because it is, as Scott said, and I won't forget this term, it's a three-party agreement. Selectmen or the town, the light commissioners as light commissioners, and water commissioners as water commissioners, three separate boards. And that's why we've linked them together so that we can't negotiate, well, we'll take the money from the solar, but we'll also keep the cell tower money, because that ain't gonna happen. Because then we lose all the revenue opportunities. Then the alternative to that, if that were to be separate, is that we just build this project on water department property, on light and water department property, and we take care of the revenue.
Okay, so it's not lose
Which is
sight of
not
that.
good for the town, because
No.
this is a town project, we wanna make it a town project.
When you think of this in the
What do you
whole
want?
piece of the thing, the water department, it's a win for the water department, it's a win for the ratepayers for the water department.
Correct.
Because now they're gonna build a surplus, which they didn't have. It's a win for the ratepayers on the light side because of the peak shaving and the solar component. And it's a win for the town because we're getting not only what was going into the conservation fund, into the CPC, we're getting the match. Plus, there's a little extra that could go for capital purposes. So,
I think
you can't find a situation that's better
I think
for
it-
all
I think
parties
it-
involved.
I think it's great, just say, when you say it's a three-party agreement, maybe it should be a four-party agreement where you get Conservation Commission, on board, because look, the last thing you want is a town meeting, someone from Conservation
Well, we're gonna
Commission.
visit them.
Yeah, okay, of course.
I'm visiting everybody.
Of course, okay, all right.
I hope
Yeah, I mean,
everyone, yes,
yeah.
Without question,
Right,
they
right.
should also, they should be in the loop, but I guess it's a legal mechanism, they don't have a legal standing here.
Sure.
But I think that there are two things here. One is, I would hate to be the one standing up and trying to explain an article with at least 7 whereases and a therefore here. What I would really suggest is that there's a relatively concise
summary.
2-slide PowerPoint, and I don't know who makes it, whether it may be all three parties, where the selectmen, water, and light commissioners make the presentation that says, this is what we're trying to do, this is how we're trying to accomplish it. And Bonnie gets up, or Steve, or somebody
Yep.
here gets up with one very simple financial slide that says, these are the gazentas, these are the gazadas, and at the end of the day, it's better for the town. It's certainly better for the water department, that is in straits for money, water ratepayers, and it's better for the light ratepayers because of the peak shaving, and we at least keep the conservation money whole, if not throw a little more into that kitty. And that ought to be one slide.
Exactly.
With 3 or 4 columns that everybody can understand.
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is it's complicated, and,
Because this is really complicated.
Oh, yeah.
and amen, my friend said for the town meeting presentation, but I'd say in advance of that, you probably ought to do your own little horse and pony show for cable television. I'm sure they'd like to do that, and then if the light department, has it within their means, you might even want to send out a mailer that explains it to people.
We
too.
have a significant article being developed now. Again, we are premature here, in the sense that until the pro forma is completed, and we know the true values so that the selectmen and the commission get together, it's all speculative. We believe it's gonna be a no-brainer from the pro forma, but again, until Scott has resolved that matter, we can have the negotiations. Once the negotiations complete over the next few weeks, we'll put these all together and we'll come back and visit with you. We have to visit, truly, it should have been selectmen and board of commissioners first, but because of meetings, we're preempting that. Sorry, gentlemen. So that we're here tonight, we're going to sustainability committee, that first meeting, to just give the concepts again. But then we're gonna have the selectmen and board have their brass tacks meeting, which should be a very, hopefully enjoyable meeting, because I think it's all good news. And then from there, then we'll follow up, come back to these committees if so desired, and clearly go see Conservation Commission, go see the CPC, any other group that's interested.
What selectmen's meeting is it in? Is
They
it?
don't know yet, because until Scott's finished the pro forma, we'll have it as soon as the pro forma is done. It'll be a few weeks from now, figuring end of October, maybe mid to end of October. It'll be well in advance of town meetings. It might be a 2-week blitzkrieg, if you will, to visit a lot of these committees to give them the details. But we'll have the PowerPoint presentation completed for that, so what town meeting will see, all these committees, and we'll be happy to come back to you, we'll see the same thing.
Maybe the Light and Water Commissioners should host meetings a couple days after selectmen's meetings, so that whether you ever use them or not, have them in place
Sure.
well within the limits of town meeting, of open meeting law.
Yeah,
So that
Your board generally meet, once a month or so?
Yeah, on Monday, so, but we do the same Mondays as select when we can, so we'll have a joint meeting then.
But you could either join there, assuming that it can happen, but if you can't come to agreement before that meeting, there should be 1 or 2 others posted.
Definitely, agreed.
Just to make sure that we get everybody on board before the 4th.
Right.
Because we
Correct.
don't want a big fight on town.
There'll be no fight coming
And
forward.
and educate the public. I think if everybody gets a chance
Without
to
question.
understand it.
Again, this is really the first opportunity for the public to get more than what they just heard. And we have a long ways to go before we have all the details worked out. But conceptually, I think we all understand the concept of what we're doing. The devil's in the detail, but I firmly believe the detail is going to be almost the easiest part. It's the concept that's more critical.
So I'll just mention, I'm this board's rep to the Citizens Participation Committee, and we have a plain language initiative, so
Oh, boy.
we'd be happy. Well, no, I mean, the idea is
I understand.
is to try to make it, things simpler, so.
I'm easy at making things simple.
Yeah.
I can't say that, but
Yeah, I think one of the things that, that we haven't really talked about, that the Light Commission has to decide on, is, this is a big nut for us. It's, it's $4 to $5 million, for the solar and the peak shaving. It's a lot of money. But we do have a rate stabilization fund that we utilize to, stabilize our rates. So this, in fact, would be a good use of that fund.
And just to
Because
be
it-
clear for the public, that whole financial exercise is not a town meeting vote. That's internal to the.
Correct.
unless we borrow money.
So that's really when we have these feasibility studies and we come in, we say, this is what it's gonna cost us, and this is the, these are the advantages, this is the, financial advantages of the town. That's when they kinda have to make that, okay,
Right.
let's go forward with it.
That's what the pro forma is all about. What's the payback now? Are we assuming, 8 to 10 year payback, a 10 to 20 year payback? Obviously, it's a payback sooner or later, because if there's not a payback, we wouldn't be doing this. So the idea for Scott and I is to get the pro forma done and seeing, is this a payback sensible? Is that payback sensible with the gifting of the money to the town as part of this three-party agreement? Those are all things we have to work out, because the board has to swallow this, as Scott said, the board has to agree to this significant expenditure, knowing that the ratepayer is going to get a significant rate of return, and the town. So we have two parties that get a rate of return. The town gets a rate of return, obviously, and the ratepayers, obviously, all ratepayers, which includes Littleton and Boxborough, residents, commercial, all ratepayers. It won't be, we have 4, 5, 6, 7 classes of ratepayers.
Well,
They all
both Littleton
share.
and Boxborough are the ratepayers, but effectively the stockholders are the people. of
Right,
Littleton.
so the stockholders get the value in what we talked about.
We get
in
two banks for
reduction-
a buck.
Right, exactly, reduction of the municipal, the rate, we'll say, of the give back. And all ratepayers share equally on the rate reduction because of the shaving component.
So just walk, okay, so to me, it sounds like the Light and Water Commissioner, or the Light Commissioners, have to buy off on the project.
Correct.
Then the Light Commissioners have to buy off on the three-party agreement with the Water Commissioners and the Selectmen.
Correct.
Now, the three-party agreement has to be, if not agreed upon, at least vetted at the meeting where the commissioners and selectmen meet, which is in 2 weeks.
Over the next month, correct.
Okay, over the next, okay,
Yeah, we have a month,
yeah,
basically.
but, okay. So, I mean, is this all schedulable? It's.
We hope so.
Well,
The key is that the pro forma being done by a consultant is the criteria. When Scott gets that, then everything falls into place, or not. Or not. I mean, if he gets a pro forma that the cost is way above what we anticipated, and the revenue return from all these various is way below what we anticipated, or what a model say, then we have a problem. But those are all gonna be worked out by our engineering staff. led by
Are the
Scott.
variables really that unknown or not? They are?
Yeah,
Not on the-
I think with peak shaver, that's kind of locked down, we have a pretty good sense of that. With the landfill solar, it's, because of our slopes on that landfill, and they actually they can't, penetrate into the ground, so they use like a blocking system, and then you can only have certain slopes, and then, only part of the landfill faces the south and the steep slope. So that's where they really have to, the feasibility study is, in fact, they were out, the civil engineers were out today, look at the land and see what size array we can put there, and then This is what you can put, this is what it's gonna cost, this is the output, and go from there.
So the big unknown is the generating capacity, is that what it is?
Oh, the solar?
Yeah.
We could tell you based on one megawatt demand, how that plays out financially, but we can't tell you, can the site lend itself to a megawatt demand? It's a half megawatt, it's a quarter megawatt. Once we have that number estimated and the cost for that, then Scott can back into everything else, not back in, he can figure out the rest of it in terms of value and cost and all those good things. But that's very doable, but we need a professional to give us that civil component, because that's all we are not that.
Well, I hope he gives it to you soon, because I agree with Fred, that there's a lot of
Yeah.
moving parts, here, a lot of
She
people
might
need
want
to
to.
buy into it,
Yeah,
but,
definitely.
I'll just close my thoughts with two comments. One is, it's important that I think it's important that we not lose sight of the fact that you didn't have to do any of this. This is all initiative, and I think that's terrific, and not surprising, frankly. Like a lot of departments are both, if nothing else, very inventive and creative. And the second thing is, specific to the water infrastructure costs. I mean, that really came to light in last year's budget process, that we did not have an adequate means of addressing that. And absent something like this, it would probably redound to water rate increases to pay for capital improvements.
Right, which it will anyways, because this is just a little bit of it. One of the things we have to look at, if you recollect, when we put the spec pond treatment plant in, that was a $3.5 million expenditure some 15 years ago. We got half it back in a grant, but what we ended up doing is, until the grant came in, which I'm not available any longer, rather than have a rate increase, we had basically like a lot of water pumps are doing now, we just had a cost on the bill, so everyone paid that amount, so they have to worry, didn't matter how much you use, just if you were water ratepayer of a certain size, you paid that amount, so it was a known revenue stream. Those are one of the things we'll have to work out too, as we see our revenue sources. Is there another increase in point, and by the way, our water rates are well below the norm for the state too, which I don't have with me, but we will have that, a big survey just came out. So what is going to be the components to make up this $200,000 first year? But then after, we want to keep that money, because that $200,000 pays for the bond debt for the first year, but then we can use that to put away for future capital improvements, which are substantial still. There's a lot that we need to do to get ready for the 21st century plus.
Well, you could give it aging infrastructure. I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
There've been 3 main breaks on Harwood Avenue.
Easy.
You know, so,
1912 water main.
yeah, well, okay.
Okay. Any other questions?
soon
And I'll
it'll
open
be
it up to
300
the
years
audience
old.
too, if anyone else wants to.
I just had a question about the location for the solar panels. I mean, any particular reason why we're doing it at the transfer station, or is that just because we're putting in the generator over there, or is that like an ideal location, or?
That's what we'll find out.
Yeah, well, I think it was the opposite. I think the generator could go in a lot of different locations. I mean, we could put it at our campus at 39 Air Road, quite frankly. But then we started looking at, maybe townland where we put solar.
Right.
And, the good thing about it, landfills, it's capped, you can't really use that land for anything.
Right.
Other town land, yeah, you might, I mean, look, we put the building out back, and we have a nice facility out back now with the soccer field and everything. If you put solar in certain pieces of land, then you can't use the land. But the landfill, that's why a lot of towns are doing
And
it.
that's also the piece that allows the town to get a piece of the
Right.
action.
Right.
Chris, we can
Right.
use water pump property because we can't use for anything else.
Yeah.
But other water pump property the town has is either in conservation restriction, which you can't use, or it's open space ball fields, which you sure as hell can't use. And so we
Yeah.
are limited to the amount of land the town has available to it. And if we can put them both together, it helps with just the generating capacity and
Yeah.
and oversight of those.
I just know that in Chelmsford, they put them on top of like the school buildings, so I didn't know whether, this was like an ideal location, the transfer station, or,
The problem with schools is that we'd have to go into, you can always use municipal building roofs, there's no doubt about that. But we're finding from our work at Distribution Way, we're purchasing the output of 4, is it now, Scott?
4 megawatt.
4 megawatt, that our building roofs would need additional structural integrity,
Right.
all of them. So if we're able to do what we need to do on the landfill,
Yeah.
far cheaper cost for construction. But those are options we look at if in
Yeah.
fact this doesn't
Yeah.
bear
I
out.
was just wondering about that, okay.
Yeah, that winter that we had 3 years ago, when all the roofs were collapsing, that changed the whole code.
That's when you should have
Yeah.
had this idea. Then we could have got you to pay for the roofs.
Yeah, that changed the whole code. I mean, all the roof designs have changed since then, and so existing buildings, a lot of them won't support any additional weight.
And maintenance too, if you can do land-based, it's easy to get to the structures for maintenance, removal of snow, if in fact you have a significant snowpack.
I just know in Chelmsford, they put them on both middle schools and the high school, so I just.
But remember, in the case of Chelmsford, a contractor came in, he's selling it back to the town, and we know in Acton, for example, in Acton, the contractor is paying a very small lease payment. They're selling the output back to, because they're getting all the tax breaks and all that, because they're a private entity. They're selling the output from the solar panels at the Acton landfill, which is a very cheap way of doing it, 11 cents to the community. Well, you as residents in the town of Littleton pay like 10.5 cents. So already, if you were to go with a deal like that, you'd be losing money before you even started. Because their rates are 14, 15, 18 cents. Our rates are 10 cents retail. So it's almost impossible for someone to do this because our rates are too low to make it cost effective for them to do it.
But am I correct in assuming that if this turns out to be wildly successful, there's nothing to preclude, expansion if that's what you desire to do?
Correct. The only thing is that we'd be very careful, Scott can go into details about this, about how much you put into any one entity of power because it can really unbalance your load.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing a lot in the buildings. I mean, IBM put them up.
Yeah.
The
On their roofs, right?
aggregate is
Yeah.
they're putting it right at Spec Pond. They're putting a land-based system in.
Okay.
They're not putting on their roof. Toyota's putting some on their roof. So it's really starting to catch on. I don't think, I know there haven't been any light department funded solar projects in the state yet. I think there's light departments have been involved with them, but, developers have come in and funded it and then sold the power back to light departments. But this would be probably the first light department funded solar project. So,
The town owned, basically.
yeah, town
Yeah.
owned.
Yeah.
There won't be any tax implications on this one. There's no pilots.
Okay.
Just add to ours.
Folks, anything? All right, well,
Thank you very much for
Good
having
luck,
us.
and,
There's so many open holes here, again, it's our
Yeah.
first week into this. But we'll be happy to come back before town meeting and give you the details as we're able to put them together. Thank you for having us.
thank you.
Thank you.
For all you do. Okay. No longer on the warrant for the special town meeting, but we haven't seen our colleagues from the sewer feasibility committee since May, and it's a good time to, I think, have you give us an update on what you've been doing since then, and how the potential project has evolved, or whatever kind of presentation you want to make. So we do have two members here, the chair, Megan Ford, and also Rich Crowley, who's a planning board member and planning board designated the sewer feasibility committee. So,
Thank you so much for having us back. I'm happy to provide an update where we are right now. And when I joined this committee 3 years ago as a citizen at large with the hopes to give back to the town that I love so much, I had an inkling that this would become a very important committee at one point, and it kind of has in my mind. Why are we looking at this? Let's just quickly review. The whole thing about this is a basic infrastructure, which could be a huge investment for our town and for our town's future. Sewers work, there's no doubt about it. There's just like roads, water, electricity, sewers are a basic infrastructure that lots and lots of towns are using, and they work. I grew up in a town with a current population of 1,792 people. We had sewers. It was no big deal, and I'm starting to get a lot of letters of support now from people. Property owners are starting to become vocal proponents of this. They want this. The number one thing I want to clarify before I go on is that what we've been looking at is a system that we will not be asking residents to pay for the construction and use of the sewer. The sewer we're looking at is for the business district and the common area to be paid for by the commercial property owners in that business district. But from what I understand, and Bonnie, you can probably clear this up, the current revenue projections for the next few years are relatively flat. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So this would be an asset because it would bring potential revenue to the town. It's something that we could enhance our business district and generate an increase in commercial tax base, which would then help the residential tax base. We could also replenish the groundwater to the watershed where it came from. I just heard Savas say that water capacity could be limited. There could be days where we can't have water. Well, this is really critical. We could do something about it now, invest for Littleton's future. We need to learn to adapt for the future. You know, I'm emailing with 97-year-olds. If people don't adapt, what becomes of it? You have to always adapt. And sewers are something that are tried and true and definitely are helpful for communities. Another thing this could do is if we do enhance our business district, it would enhance our community. It would give people a place to go. Senior citizens could walk to a place where a food service, coffee shop where they could sit down and have drinks, spend money in town, rather than have people drive through Littleton to go to another town to spend their money. We could have people from other towns coming here and spending money, and we could support local businesses. The Common is a great place for small local businesses. I think that our consultant that we have used, and I probably brought this to you in May, has come up with some projections of what the potential tax revenue increase could be at full build-out. But that could be 20 years from now, and it's something like $7.7 million. That's kind of hard to imagine. What I would like to see now that we're not on the warrant for fall town meeting is maybe we have our chief assessor in town pick a few random buildings and do an assessment of what, a projection of what the revenue could be now with and without a sewer 5 years from now. I think that the great thing about the sewer system is we can direct the economic growth. I just read an article about, I think, Route 20 Worcester area is looking to build a large sewer to invite development and promote development. You can also use sewer to direct development so that you can inhibit sprawl in the open spaces and agricultural land and direct it towards just a business district. And who knows, if the sewer system can be successful for the town and the Common area, perhaps it can be helpful to the people at the lake area that are having problems with their septics. We don't know. But this would be a great place to start. The zoning restrictions that we have, the planning board revised the zoning in 2010, I believe, and of course Rich can vouch for this, but we have restrictions so that we could never have big box stores. We cannot have buildings, I believe, taller than 32 feet, and they have to maintain Littleton's character, and if anybody were to rebuild, it would look a lot nicer. Take, for instance, the new building going up to Littleton, next to Littleton, the Toyota, it's matching the new zoning restrictions, so even if everybody tore down buildings and rebuilt because of the sewer, it's never going to look like a mall. It's meant to look like a walking village, and I think that's really great that we have those zoning restrictions in place now before we possibly do go to a sewer. I had a nightmare the other week that we didn't do sewer. I think it's important for everyone to think about really long and hard, think about what would we do if we didn't have sewer. What kind of businesses, what kind of properties can we have without sewer? Warehouses, banks, gas stations, secondhand stores. Is that the kind of town we want for Littleton? Is that where we think, is that a healthy business structure? Is that going to help the residential taxpayers? I think that Littleton's health, both economic health and environmental health, really we need to do something about it, and this will be very supportive and a huge investment. Our committee, the Littleton Common Sewer Feasibility Study Committee, voted a couple weeks ago. Before we voted, I counseled the committee to think about if we make a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen to insert an article onto a town warrant, we don't want to insert an article that we think is going to fail. Is this a project that we don't think is going to work, or is this something we think is going to work? Do we have a concept in hand that we think is feasible and that would be good for the town? We voted unanimously and asked the Board of Selectmen to insert an article onto the fall town warrant. Now, that says that our committee has the faith that this is a system. We have a concept that it can be feasible and can work for Littleton. The next phase is to start designing that system. We need to figure out a way to start designing a system that is to be paid for by the users of that system, but there isn't a system, so there aren't users yet, so how are we gonna pay for the design? It's a little bit of a catch-22. The Board of Selectmen respectively decided not to put it on the fall town meeting warrant, and from my understanding, they're going to take some time to figure out how to pay for this. And I think that's very smart, actually. I was disappointed because I felt that our committee was ready to do our public information and tell everybody all about this. I still am feeling motivated to do that, that's why I'm here tonight. But I think that it's important that the Board of Selectmen explore ways to pay for this. Possibly, we are meeting with the property owners.
When you say this, you're talking about the study.
The
The
design
design.
of our concept. So our committee has a concept that is potentially feasible. We now want to go to the next phase. We're recommending that we move on to the next phase and start designing it. When we design it, we're going to get commitment from the users of the system. So we will then identify the payers. Who's going to pay for this? Who's going to pay for the construction? Who's going to pay for the use of the sewer system? And who's going to even probably maybe pay for the design of the system? We have to figure out that part. The design could possibly be paid for if we can get a commitment from potential users to maybe throw money into a pot that could be used towards a future sewer, or if not, maybe it'll go towards fixing their septic systems. But in any event, I think that this would be a huge asset and investment into Littleton's future, and our committee is comfortable with the fact that we have found a feasible system, and we'd like to recommend the design of that to answer lots of questions, such as the soil. Where can we physically put it? How can it physically work here in Littleton? And do we have enough users of the system to hook up to make it work? We believe so because we've surveyed them. The large majority are interested in this. I'm starting now to hear from them. I'm getting letters back, and I'm hearing from not just the property owners who would be the people deciding to hook up, but also the businesses. There's a woman across the street from where I am who I think her business is in massage, and she has to send all of her laundry out because she cannot do her own laundry in the facility of her location. So it's an expense for her. And so she wants this. Business owners want it, property owners want it. A lot of people in town are very much proponents for this. So I think that it's something we need to look at a little closer as far as how we're gonna get from concept, design as the bridge, to having a system that's paid for by users of the system.
But before we get into questions from the committee and the residents, I just would like you to flesh out a little bit about the process. Not all of us, follow it as closely as you do, so
Yes.
even if it's at the risk of repeating something you may have said in May,
Happy to do that, yeah.
just who's on your committee, the
Yeah.
consultant,
Yeah.
what kind of expertise has already been done, what are the next steps,
Okay.
those kind of.
Sure, we'll backtrack because I know that a lot of people are paying attention, and sometimes some people, this is the first they've heard of it. Our committee was appointed by the Board of Selectmen in 2010. We've had a few people leave the committee and a few people join the committee recently. I've been on it from the beginning. I'm a citizen at large, and I'm now the chair since January. We have a representative from the Board of Selectmen. Ted Doucette is on the committee. We have a representative from the Planning Board, Rich Crowley. Joe Quintra from the PMBC served for many years, and now we have Steve Moore. We have the Board of Health, Peter Casaneri, and we have citizen at large, Steve Yonley, Dina Flockhart, myself,
Don't forget Jan.
Janet Levine. And we've had Ken Smith in the past, and is there any other boards that represent, that I'm missing? I should have written it down, but I can only say wonderful things. We have people with advanced degrees, a lot of people who specialize in this area. Janet Levine and Warren Terrell bring wonderful expertise to our committee.
Warren, there's another one that you.
Yeah, Warren Terrell, sorry. Warren Terrell is a citizen at large. People that have a lot of knowledge in this area. Savastanos is a consultant for us, and we have consulted with Charles River Watershed Association. They are the consultant that we use, but also the executive director is a resident of Littleton, Bob Zimmerman, who cares deeply for this town as well as many of the members, everybody on our committee. We have a report from the Charles River Watershed Association that came out in January of 2012, which is a very exhaustive, wonderful study that is our concept for a
Is it a
sewer
hydrology
system.
study? Is it a build-out study? What's the?
It's a study of a system with components that, and the way that this could work to make it feasible for Littleton, because there's conventional sewer systems that are built at full build-out right off the bat, expecting, like I said, for development to come, and invites people to come to your town and hook up to the sewer, and a lot of towns want that to stimulate economic growth. And that's not necessarily what we want in Littleton. What we want in Littleton is to enhance what's already a really nice common area. We have the buildings, the structure is there, but there's a lot of vacancies. There's not a lot of healthy businesses there. We can't have a lot of businesses. Dentists can't come to town, food service can't come to town, doctors can't come to town. There's limits to what you can have, and I've been hearing time and time again from people with business plans that want to go to these vacancies, and the landlords have to say, I'm sorry, you can't bring your business here, the Board of Health won't let you. So we have a study that has different components that could be built in smaller phases, in modules, be added onto, bless you, if there is a need, if we can make it more dense with commercial development, we could add on to this in the future if need be, but it's a small upfront capital, so we're not asking, we're making it, it's affordable for the users of the system. The other thing to mention is, the study area includes some very large commercial properties, including the Point and IBM. So a lot of people worry about the smaller properties and the smaller business properties, and would they be able to afford this? The idea is that it would be paid for proportionally. So the more you use, the more you pay, the less you use, the less you pay, so it is an affordable system for everybody. That's how it can work. That's why it's feasible. If we were looking at a system like what Tewksbury has, or what Acton has, or Chelmsford has, no, that would not be feasible here. That type of system wouldn't work here. So we have in hand something that is, I forget how many times more valuable than what we would have had based on the funds that we received from the town to start our study, which was $50,000. That, correct me if I'm wrong, Bonnie, but I believe it came from unused teacher retirement money that was not used because no teachers retired that year.
No,
Oh, no?
we don't deal with teachers' retirement.
Okay, what was the money?
Warrant articles or something.
They were separate warrant articles.
The $50,000 was from,
It might have been from county retirement.
okay, county
And
retirement.
the other one was from the light department payment.
Okay, yes, so it was unused retirement, meaning nobody used their retirement that year, so
No.
it was.
Well, it's just an article. that
It's
was-
just an article.
Okay, never mind. But anyway, we ended up getting grants on top of that, which made our study much more valuable. We got a lot more out of this than we would have originally. So we have something very valuable, a wonderful concept for something that could add a great deal. It could be a great investment for our town. So I don't know if that answers a lot of the questions that you had.
Probably a good time to get into a question I imagine both board members and citizens would like to. Fred, you were going to...
Well, the one thing that came up, I sat through the excruciatingly long discussion at the selectmen's meeting on this.
Yeah.
And one thing that came out was that the committee was going to try to gain input from the property owners going forward.
Yep.
And I guess my question is it your understanding that your committee has the charter to do that, or is it actually the Board of Selectmen and the town administration have the responsibility to do that? And are those roles clear so that we don't get down the road 3 months and, oh, well, I thought you were doing it, and no, I thought you were doing it, and nobody did it. I just, in your mind, who's going to do it?
It's my understanding that our committee has fulfilled our charge, and the only thing we have left to do before we dissolve at a town warrant will be to inform the public about our study that we have. And I believe that it's my impression that the Board of Selectmen would have to direct the town to contact the property owners and make contact with them and establish some sort of agreement with them, if that's even a possibility, and explore the mechanism to possibly get them to participate ahead of the design process.
So has your committee had that discussion with the selectmen so that, I mean, the time between now and May is not that far away to get all this sort of aligned so that if in fact the selectmen choose to go forward in May, that they have a good story to tell, or they have the group of business people in the center that say, yeah, this is a good thing that we want it, so there's some pull rather than just some push. At this point, it feels like there's just some push with some resistance, but if there was pull from the business community, I would think that that might shed a little different light on the discussion.
I wasn't at Monday night's meeting, but somewhere along the way I heard, I thought there was something in the works, maybe it wasn't you folks, maybe it is the selectmen, some meeting in October with property owners, or a potential meeting?
We have an informative meeting.
Okay.
That we've invited the commercial property owners to an informational forum, and that's on October 5th, and it's a multi-purpose room, and that is really to share with the property owners our study and what we've been giving we had a public informational forum. Our committee hasn't met since the night after the selectmen made that decision, and that was a meeting where we actually had a public information meeting that was taped, and it was a presentation, so we never really had a discussion about anything else on the agenda that night. So we plan to meet, I believe, next week. We'll have another meeting where we will regroup after this decision has been made not to put it on the warrant. And so Ted is our Board of Selectmen representative, and I do plan to find out some, possibly we can, as a committee, present to the Board of Selectmen as a whole, the request to make sure that this is what our focus is right now. We do want to have this move forward eventually and end up on an article. And if we need to work on a mechanism of how to pay for that design, I would like to see that get into the works.
Yeah, to me, it's sooner rather than later. I'm sorry, go ahead, Alan.
Yeah. The additional monies you're asking for, I'm a little bit confused. Is this to design the system? Or is this to see if the design that you've picked out is feasible and actually work? Because I've heard you kind of say both things.
It's different. Yeah.
To ferret out the design that would be suited best for the town of Littleton. The feasibility study has many models in it.
Yeah, I've read it, so.
And not all of those would be suitable for the town of Littleton. And the next stage would be to bring that to closure, to see which model or models would work best for the town of Littleton.
But as I read the study, if you look at the models that they had, at the bottom line, it has what the ratepayer is going to pay. And most of those are in excess of what the study says is the average around the state. One of which, if the ratepayers are paying for the whole thing, is $100 and some odd over versus $62, which to me says, well, nobody's going to buy that anyway. So my question is, if we spend the money to do it, do we already know it's going to work? Not only is it going to work as a system, but are we going to be able to afford it? Can the people who are going to use it pay for it? And I guess that's the real question that comes up every time people talk about it. But generally they talk about, well, it happened in this town and that town and this town. And I know this system is totally different from that. But I do get the sense that we're on the edge about whether it can be sustained by the ratepayers just by reading the study that you've already done.
See, the answer to that question, Al, is in the next phase. That's where we find out that answer. Now, with a several $1 million potential additional tax revenue, is it worth exploring that answer? And that's really a decision that the taxpayers will have to make. I believe personally that if the light at the end of the tunnel can yield an additional $3 to $5 million in taxes over the next 5 to 10 years, I think that might be, to me, that would be worth exploring. I think we have a duty to explore that. But we can't answer that question in this phase. That's the next phase.
Okay. Jake, yeah, Brian?
I want to applaud you for the notion of getting the town assessor to weigh in, because I would put a lot more faith in what our town assessor says is a realistic 5-year estimate than an outside consultant. So, if he says it's 7 million, if he says it's 1 million, I mean, so I applaud you for that, because that's a number that I think a lot of us could have a lot more faith in. I do wonder about the premise that septic and septic alone is what's holding back development in town. I mean, I think, and maybe this goes to the Economic Development Committee, but I got an email from one of the business owners who said that after looking into some of the spaces in the commune, he said the vacancies are due to high rental rates for spaces in mediocre condition and limited parking, has nothing to do with lack of septic. And he says, in my opinion, that's his point. And I'm just wondering, I mean, I think parking is the other half of the equation, and I'm not sure that septic alone solves it. I mean, we could have, you could put I don't know, TGI Fridays, where the pub is, and no one will be able to park there. So having said that, I mean, I'd love to see the I'd defer to see what the assessor says.
Yeah.
Other board member questions or comments? I've got a few, and I'll certainly give the audience time to make their points too.
Make one more comment. This sewer district that we're talking about is not just the downtown district. It crosses 495 and it encompasses the industrial area over up to Beaverbrook Road. And some of those buildings are sitting right on our well. And what this sewer district would do would be to take those businesses that are sitting on that well right now and force them off the septic system into this. And that would really greatly improve our, the risks that we have to that well. So this is not just the downtown area, it's across the highway. And the other thing is that 2/3 of the users would be basically IBM and Sand Park. So we're talking 1/3 is what would be spread across the 100 smaller businesses. And this was originally recommended by Metropolitan Area Planning Council, who the town hired prior to 2010 and helped us craft the zoning that we came up with to protect the town village in 2010 with all these design standards. They're the ones that helped us create Area A and Area B. Both of those zoning amendments passed at more overwhelmingly 2010 with an overwhelming amount of.
But there haven't been many businesses that have even taken advantage of it yet.
And in the time past since 2010, there's been only one business that's taken advantage of that, and that's the Toyota business. And that's because he wants to
Not what we had in mind.
detailing and shop there. It's really the water usage that's stopping all of this. If you look at what we have downtown, we have real estate agents, we have banks, we have used commodity stores, and really, what do those return back to the citizens of Littleton? I know for one, I would love to see a coffee shop downtown. I'd love to see a bakery downtown, a butcher shop downtown. But we can't have any of that until and if if and until we get some kind of relief with it.
For my part, Brian reminded me of years ago, the two of us serving on the Economic Development Committee. I completely agree that parking is another component of that, but that's not in your charge. It's in your charge, and the planning board perhaps. But I think it's something we all, need to be conscious of that. I mean, I don't perceive this as a silver bullet, but certainly, and I make no bones about it, I've been supportive of the concept for a long time. I'll just remind folks that when it was first promoted as an idea, it had nothing to do with economic development. In the impulse to do sewering had to do with a concern that septic systems were primarily in a part of town that were down gradient from our wells, and we were drawing down on our wells. So that was kind of the push from both the Board of Health and the Water Commission, and the Water Department at that time promoted it many years ago. The economic development piece, which I think is very real, is, at least initially was secondary. I mean, I think you can sell it either way. But there's a lot of remaining pieces, even as a sympathetic ear to it, that I think would need to be fleshed out by you folks, before the town would get comfortable on it, just on the dollars and cents level. Part of it is obviously the whole payment process. I mean, that step of having the selectmen or whoever it is interact with the property owners, so we really know, in some finite form that they're going to buy into this, and then that's the payment mechanism. Two is the impact on the revenue stream, and I agree, and I agree with Brian in your stated intention to try to use the assessor's office to come up with some in-house numbers of what kind of difference sewering could potentially mean to properties in the common area, to our revenue stream. I mean, we write it in our report every year after we get done giving all the good news. The last paragraph is always, but the projections are terrible, in terms of our cost versus our revenue. So to the extent that this helps address that, I think we have to be serious about it. Thirdly, it just occurs to me that, this is real new to us, I guess. And the town of Littleton has been on the cutting edge of a lot of things over the years, whether it be electric light in 1912, before the power companies closed the door on that and passed the law in the 20s, making sure that no other towns do that, or groundwater protection bylaw in the early 70s, long before anyone else had it. But we're surrounded by towns, as diverse as Ayer, Acton, Westford, and now Harvard, that have sewering, and they've, for a variety of reasons, have decided to go that route. I guess I want to hear more about what the experiences of some of the neighbor towns are, both in the financing of it and what they found, especially the ones that have done it more recently. I know Harvard is probably still in the building stage. They probably don't have much experience with it yet. But that's probably something that needs to be part of the pitch. And then finally, on the smaller level, is the design costs. I know in earlier discussions, or when the subjects come up before, it was always understood that if you didn't go ahead and build, then the taxpayer would essentially have to own the cost of the design cost if it's not done, but that if it did go forward, that it could be incorporated into a payback through the betterment process or whatever. I guess clearer detail on that would be something I'd be interested in too. So I mean, that's just,
Well, again, I'm not sure that's the charter of the committee. I think you should be asking their boss.
Well, I might have been looking at Megan, but you're correct.
I mean, I think the problem here is that the selectmen have given a charter to these people, and these people are taking all the bullets.
Right.
When the selectmen are the ones that are in charge of it.
Well, then, good point. Let me just say, I wanted to on record that those are things that needed to be done. So maybe we need to communicate, or I'll communicate that to the selectmen, that should be part of the complete picture.
A lot of what you're just asking is going to be found out in the next phase.
Okay.
It's in that study.
Yeah.
And if you want those answers, we would have to move into that study to find.
Fair enough, and for the detail of what has already happened, probably should have mentioned this earlier, you do have a website that has a lot of this information, I forget the name offhand.
VillageCommonSewer.com.
And I don't have a marker, villagecommonssewer.com.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's no Littleton in it, but that'll get you the Littleton.
Yeah, villagecommonssewer.com, and we have a link to the report, the written report from the CRWA, as well as frequently asked questions, and then we have an ongoing blog with updated information as well.
Good,
Yeah, and the report is online, it's on the town website.
okay,
Yeah, you can also find a lot on the website about our study as well.
all right. Anything from the town offices before we move into the general public, anything to add, or?
We did take a look at, this project and how we funded prior projects of this capacity and size. And based on our own financial policies that have been adopted a number of years ago, any major capital projects such as construction or major renovations like this are to be accomplished with debt exclusions. So, and we've done that in the past. We've also done it to incorporate anything beyond the feasibility stage. So once we start getting into design, we've gone for debt exclusions, like for the Russell Street School and the police station most recently.
Right, but not for the Church Meadows property?
Feasibility?
Well, just the dollar amount is what triggers it, not a feasibility so much.
It's for construction, that's under the policy.
Okay.
Construction and renovation. So this would be a construction project, so just applying that policy to it. We're getting into the design phase, and it's $600,000 in that neighborhood. We would, under our existing policies, go for a debt exclusion. So the selectmen, looked at that. We also looked at the issue of, in other communities that some of us have been familiar in working with, the question of getting design money has been kind of incorporated together with the creation of the district, so that when you go to town meeting, in some other communities that you might look at around us, you create the district, so we know, okay, who's paying for it? And then the next article is appropriating or borrowing, authorizing the borrowing for that design work. That it's kind of being taken a little bit differently here, in that we're not going forward and creating that district right now.
Well, there's nothing to say it couldn't be done that way, but for the fall, for the spring, rather.
But the fact that we haven't really gone through and done the legwork and getting the buy-in from the businesses, or promoting that they have buy-in with the businesses.
Talk to your boss.
So that's kind of the next step that the selectmen looked at, saying we need to do a little bit more work.
Yeah, which
in getting that.
typically the buy-in comes as part of the design process. It's my understanding that the commitment comes as part of the design. But we're asking, I'm going to ask the Board of Selectmen to tell the town to try to get some commitment before the design.
Okay.
And just in one more point, if we incorporate this borrowing into the expenses for the town, where we don't have a project authorized as of yet, we need to finance it over 5 years. So we have to incorporate that into the budget for the next 5 years. If we know that there's a project coming, so in May, we see, okay, it gets approved, we can restructure that and say, okay, we're not going to just pay it down over 5 years, we're going to ban it for as long as we can until the project's complete, and then try and incorporate that into the project. But in that absence, we do have to plan for a 5-year repayment.
Right, okay. You've been patient back there, Mr. Coughlin.
Tom Coughlin, Coughlin Road. I just have a few comments. That the one thing they didn't talk about was the cost of the sewer department if it goes that far. And I called the assessor's office to see how much an acre of land is worth in Littleton, and it's $160,000. So it's $1 million. They're looking for 10 acres, if you will, to build a wastewater treatment facility. So that's $1,600,000. Those are some of the numbers that you haven't heard tonight. The other thing is the special interest. The folks on the panel, there's a fellow by the name of Bob Zimmerman, who's the executive director of the Charles River Water Association, and he's the consultant, if you will. His firm gets paid by the town of Littleton. Ted Doucette wants to be the sewer czar. He's the...
We're not going to get into this. That's not appropriate.
The Point has its own wastewater treatment facility, and I think most of the folks are going to go to the Point rather than go to Littleton Commons. So I just
don't see any need for it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mark?
Yeah, a couple of things. Mark Levine, Hartwell Avenue. In the estimate of the $7.5 million in income that you could get over this, over the build-out, 2.8 of that is already coming from the point. So that 7.5 million is reduced significantly because we're expecting to get that 2.8. Second thing is I've been going to the meetings for quite a while. It's me and the committee. And I've never really seen any proponents there. Never seen any business owners there. Never seen any property owners there. And earlier on, Savas was here. I wish he was still here. I was talking with him about what the impact of nitrates on our water supply is. Nitrates being that that's generated from septic systems. And what he said to me is, coming out of the well itself, or tested by the well, there is a negligible nitrate involvement there. There is some in the common, granted, but that's concentrated in a holding area that's just below the mobile station. And so I don't think environmentally that's a problem with our water supply. What Savas is doing with the, $4 million we voted for the well revitalization, the reason why we're not pumping enough there is because the well itself, and this was discussions with Savas, the well itself deteriorated over time, so it can't pump that capacity. That's why they're putting the new wells in to pump additional capacity. It has really nothing to do with the amount of water that's available there. That's my understanding from Savas. And the last
Two separate issues there. I mean, there was-
well, yeah, but it's part of the issue. And then the last, but not least, is I look at the finances a lot. And I wrote an article in the paper last week that I don't see where we're going to end up not paying for this. Again, we got to get the numbers on that. But coming up on this one particular article, it's been available for 2 town meetings, but it's been dropped from the town meeting in 2 occasions. This coming up in May will be the 3rd. The first time it went up, it was, it was discussions of, well, maybe we need 300,000 to 500,000. They got a consultant together that said, well, I think 558,000 is going to do it. So that was the amount they brought up to the first time they brought it to the town meeting floor, or we're going to. So now they voted again, and it's 600,000 now, because they want to build in a buffer. My point here is that in May, is it going to come up to 700,000, 750,000? I'm just concerned about what we're going to end up paying for this,
Okay,
and I don't want to as a taxpayer.
all right, all good points, thank you. If there's anything particular you want to respond to, Megan or Rich, otherwise,
Oh,
Yeah.
we
I'm a
appreciate your time.
taxpayer too, also don't want to, I'm a taxpaying resident. And I think that we did vote the buffer, but I don't see a point of having more buffers and buffers and buffers, so.
And in the spring, we put an RFP out for consultancies. And it wasn't until just before town meeting that we've gone through the selection process and narrowed it down to three firms. And it was at that point that we were able to come much closer to what the cost of this feasibility, well, the next stage of the feasibility study would be. So it was an evolution to get to that point. But that's where it was in the spring. And we had a commitment from I believe all 3, or at least 2 of those consultants, to hold their members till the fall. So, given the economy and the the commitments we had from the consultants at the time, I don't see any issue. We would have to go back and check with them to see if they'll hold their numbers again till the spring. And that would be our next step.
Okay. Well, I think a lot of the important things that have to be done properly need to happen a step above you, and we have a joint meeting with the selectmen next Monday, so I guess we'll probably, reiterate either then or by memo at some point our points that we think ought to be drawn out further. I see there's another question back there. Do you want to comment, Bev?
I just wanted to say that I compliment Mr. McCray for having actually read the report. I also have done the daunting task of reading over 200 pages. I would suggest to any person in the viewing public that they do go on the website and do start looking through the report. I remember particularly Appendix E, which reports on a survey put out to town residents. I believe over 250 responded, and the vast majority of those who responded to the survey did not want sewer. There was a small amount who didn't care. It was only maybe 1/5, 1 out of 5, who said it would be a good idea. I don't know if 2 years later, 3 years later, things have changed. Have they?
It may have changed a couple of times. The last time the town did actually vote on it, it voted in favor of it, but it required a 2/3 vote for borrowing, and I think it was just a little shy of that. It was over 60%, but not
May I?
66%.
Mr. Chairman, it just dawned on me that when you asked that question, we actually did 2 surveys, and I think when I answered you at the public forum that I was assuming that you meant the survey we did on the property owners, where out of 98 invitations to do the survey, we got 88 responses back. 2 people said they were not interested, 2 of the property owners were not interested, and then the rest were divided with half they were interested, and the other half they wanted more information. But we did another survey, which was a preliminary survey of the entire town. We put signs up all over and asked everybody in town. That was a survey to gather what do people know about sewer so that we could know how to address their answers. It was just simply tell us what you know, what your thoughts are now. We were trying to take a temperature of the climate of what people are thinking. So there were 2 different surveys.
Okay. In any event, they're all available at the website.
Yep.
Right. Thank you all for your input. This
Thank you for having us.
discussion will go on.
Yes, definitely. I appreciate the time.
Thank you for having us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Our next agenda item, I took notes last week. We have a joint meeting coming up, the Selectmen's Committee next Monday. And we had our meeting with department heads to kick off the budget process, what was it, 2 weeks ago? Okay. Now that, we got some good feedback. I don't know, Bonnie, whether you had a chance to speak with any other department folks, but I think it's important that some of the topics that they raised, we address at the beginning of the process. And, a lot of recurrent themes, not surprising or new to you, I'm sure, about how we handle maintenance in the various departments. That came up repeatedly, numerous times. Vehicle purchase, too. Just the notion that everybody seems to be doing it in their own little pod, and, I don't know best how to express that, but when you start adding them up, independently, whether it's the replacement, vehicle maintenance.
Right.
Yeah, and whether or not we have collective mass, we need to look at that kind of formally, whether there's a cheaper way of doing that in-house.
Actually, we're doing a review from the highway department, just in their operations. And the consultant that we've engaged actually mentioned that as one of the things that he's going to focus on. So we should have some raw data for that by the winter.
Okay.
But that's just highway.
he's gonna look at it from across public safety
Oh,
to include it, yes.
fabulous, okay.
Like having, would it be feasible to have the highway mechanic, do the maintenance for the fire, this small maintenance, the things that they could do, and police vehicles and things like that. And what could they do?
Great.
So that will be one.
Would that include the schools' vehicles as well?
It would not at this level, but we could kind
What
of share
school
those
vehicles
results
do they
with the
have?
school.
Buses are contracted out, right?
No, they got
No, they have,
Well, I mean,
I know.
facilities vehicles and.
they have, like Bill Maher has the van and a red truck.
I just wonder how many vehicles they have, a couple?
That's the only two I am personally aware of.
Yeah, but still, they should.
Don't need to be asked.
Yeah, they should be, okay, definitely.
Yep.
The third topic, not surprising, is the whole cross-departmental responsibilities, getting that ferreted out. Usually the highway department and their relations with either Park and Rec or the schools in the foreseeable upcoming year. This stuff's interesting too, Monica, you want to hang around and listen to that? That's what I'm here for. Okay. So, Jim, I think, didn't have a particular fear or anything, just the annual reminder that I think we need to incorporate that properly, understand what demands are going to be asked of him as early in the process as possible, accounting for it appropriately.
We met with a consultant after that meeting.
You did?
And,
Is this a
it's the
consultant?
Collins Center out of UMass Boston. And they're going to do just a review of the highway department.
Yeah.
But they're going to focus on, some of the maintenance components that cross other departments. In particular, the relationship with Park and Rec and schools for field maintenance and facility maintenance. And just, a study of, public building maintenance, everything else. And just where should we be in 5-10 years from now, and how are we going to get there? And,
That's the other maintenance topic that came up, because the assistant police chief and fire chief both had concerns over building maintenance.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And not knowing, what priority they could get, or, some of the systems down at the police station, they're still trying to figure out if we had somebody that knew how to do that or whatever.
And I saw some departments have cleaning services and others are doing them themselves.
Right.
And, it's,
And then the general notion that, perception that addressing that issue is being held off because there's the possibility of a capital facilities department. Well, maybe we should go ahead and address the problem whether or not a capital facilities department happens.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of information coming out in the next 3 months. The PMBC has pretty much finished their feasibility study on the buildings that were identified, and they're going to have some data to roll out shortly, just about what needs are going to be coming up, and can we fund it. I haven't seen the numbers yet, so we'll have that coming up.
It just seemed to be a common undercurrent
Yep.
across the management staff that was here that night.
Yep.
And it was unfortunate that you didn't happen to be here, but it was a little bit surprising that it was as consistent. I
Yeah.
guess,
Yeah, the
across
level of
board.
consensus was very high.
It came up from a lot of different places here.
And maybe, crazy thought that more centralized, organized maintenance might result in fewer repair needs.
Both for vehicles.
Crazy thought, but.
Yeah, vehicles and general movements. Yeah.
Right, building, we've got a lot of facilities here that need to be taken care of.
Yep.
Okay, a couple other topics that came up was the review process for old articles. I know you do that, I don't know what the process is, but is that an annual occurrence?
I do it every year.
Every year, okay. All right, maybe we just need to mention that somewhere in the documents, I'm not sure where. Another topic that came up from a lot of people, specific to our one-day session, seemed to be everybody kind of liked it, although there was a complaint that when we were slotting them at specific times, which, maybe in retrospect, we need to either rethink what kind of time we anticipate for the various departments, and instead of giving them specific times where they may, we might find ourselves with a half hour to burn and waiting for somebody to show up, or conversely, somebody shows up and they're not on for an hour, But that's, that's just an operational thing we gotta give some thought to.
I made notes from last year's session
Yeah.
at how long they actually took, so I'm going to try and incorporate that into the new time slot.
And the purpose for next Monday one of the major purposes is to address getting the selectmen engaged on their priorities. So I don't know whether you had thoughts about how to express that, because my intention is maybe to, unless the board objects, to send a memo to the selectmen reminding them that's what our hope is, that by Monday we can have the beginnings of that conversation, that we need that at the front end of the process to get things going. So I will recap some of these topics that came up from the departments, but also the selectmen need to decide, you know, what their major objectives are.
Yes.
And what's the agenda topics for our conversation?
Well, that was a point of confusion last week, last time we met, Bonnie, is that, because it turned out that our, last printed schedule we had from you did not reflect what was posted for the meeting on the 16th, which was obviated by the fact that those who showed up never got to talk about those topics anyways. No fault of yours, but my read of this for the meeting on the 30th is that we will be discussing budget guidelines and process and priorities for 2015 and the update on financial policies. So those are the two topics. Is there anything else we're anticipating or would you like to include?
Well, two things. One, at some point, we need to reschedule that executive session for the three boards.
Right.
That's everything. But when can either we or us have some further discussion about some of the policies, these debt policies? I mean, the last time we talked about it, Fred had the, I thought, brilliant notion of decoupling the requirement for a debt exclusion from the notion of requiring some kind of ballot vote for over $500,000.
Well, we have that topic on our agenda tonight to get a little bit of a, you know.
Okay, great. But, and do we at some, great, full stop, and learning from Savos here to talk to us, do we get to talk with the selectmen about that at some point?
Yeah, Monday.
Is that agenda?
Financial policy.
Okay,
Yeah.
fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I have thoughts about what I'd like to address in that context too, and I think the whole specific interpretation of the policies that, you know, were adopted at some time in the past and their impact on, prospectively on the sewer study is, you know, just a reminder that we're in the process of reviewing these policies anyway.
Right.
And then a reminder too that these are policies, they're not laws or bylaws too. And as much as we adhere to them in-house, and that's good, it's, you know, it gets tossed around like it has the force of law, like the selectmen aren't allowed to do X, Y, Z. Well, sure they are, you know, and so are the school committees. You know, we need to remember what it is we're, you know, what we're dealing with here. We as much as we might like to, we can't write a policy that handcuffs the behavior of an elected board 4 years in the future, you know? So I think, you know, my goal is to get these things so in use that everybody is familiar with them, you know, they're regularly referred to, everybody knows what's in them, and that, you know, it isn't just something that, you know, few people in the process understand. I mean, every selectman ought to know what's in the process, every finance committee member, every school committee member, but that's, you know, that's on that topic. But we will, you know, I'm jumping ahead of the schedule a little bit, but we'll get into that a little bit further in detail. Do you want other report items? It's next to the item.
Very minimal, just that I'm doing the state reports as we speak. I should have everything done by the end of the month, and I have scheduled the auditor to come in November, so that we'll be done earlier this year, in anticipation, so we should be able to get, you know, all of the reports and everything that you're looking for in January.
Right, and there's no surprise, we're on schedule, and there's no surprise.
We are, knock on wood, I'll have the detailed reports for the quarter ending September 30th, but, you know, we're meeting our projected targets and, you know, on balance, and the departments are spending on par, and fiscal 13's close is essentially done.
Right.
So, knock on wood, we're in okay shape.
Okay. Now the financial policies updates on the schedule. Well, since we last met, we haven't had a meeting with the financial policy subcommittee, but I did post one for Thursday, because we're now in a receipt. Everybody should have got the color-coded version in the mail, which does reflect the existing policies, such as they are, plus specific new language, which we adopted in detail relevant to the creation of the Capital Stabilization Fund, plus a number of new topics, the language of which nobody's endorsing yet. Some of it is, ideas that Steve has promoted, some other board members have suggested, so it might be unfair to call it just placeholder, but it would be going too far to say that they're recommendations at this point. So we're meeting on Thursday to go over that as a working group. And the other new piece that I've been seeking for a while is Northborough guidebook, because the town administrator in Northborough, Codere, is that his name, Bonnie? John Codere? He was the fellow who gave the presentation at the conference last fall that we went to. And he gets so many requests for that book that they don't print and give them out anymore, which is probably what you encountered. But it is available online, it just was a little hard to find, which apparently is consistent to all websites. But all of the things we were looking for are in there somewhere. Of course, now that I've got it down onto my computer, the file is so big I couldn't email it to everybody, so I'm going to have to break up the individual pieces. Some of it you wouldn't want, because what they do is they incorporate their policies into a nice big budget book, which they don't really print. You're welcome to print it, but it includes the annual budget proposal, plus the policies, plus a citizen's guide to town meeting, the budget process, all these nice things, organizational chart. And I know we've had this conversation before, it's not something we're going to get to overnight, but that's the holy grail that I'm pursuing, is that these policies should be in something that is current as the current year's budget proposal, so that it's right there for everybody. When you pick up the budget, you're going to see what the policies are that supposedly govern it, and everybody's role in the process and how the process works. So those who are coming on Thursday, you can see it then. If you can't make it on Thursday, I'll get it to you in advance. So the reason I scheduled that meeting is since we are meeting next Monday night, we need to decide
Something to bring to the...
Yeah, my guess, is that some of these things need to be slow walked, but the existing language, much of it can probably be readopted as is, and I think the language about the capital stabilization is pretty, generic and non-controversial. And I'm going to probably suggest by Thursday when we meet with the working group that our recommendation be that we go forward and recommend readoption of all or most of the existing document, plus that piece, and anything else we feel comfortable with, and let it be an ongoing process. I know I'm kind of going ahead of the working group, since not Mike Fontenelle and Jim Carr aren't here, but I can't imagine we'll be able to produce much more than that by next, from Thursday to Monday. At first blush, is that?
I wouldn't think that we'd tackle the huge components of the document as it sits right now. But some of the things, like you said, the capital stabilization, addressing that, OPEB maybe.
Yeah. Well, we have walked through the existing language too, so on large parts of that, I don't think a lot of it is controversial, but perhaps anything that's controversial and not fully fleshed out, we'll just hold back and not recommend we act on it until there's a recommendation.
So I did have a couple comments. Just on the red stuff, I haven't even gotten through the green stuff, but, I
forget which color was which, but.
The red was the stuff that you guys have kind of agreed on, the green was sort of floated.
Placeholder stuff.
And I assume that at some point we'll be asked to approve
Yes,
this. Okay.
yes.
Okay, so in the red stuff, a couple things. In the section on TIFs and pilot, it said that the committee that looks at TIFs and pilot should be established by the selectmen, and selectmen only. Seems like that's financial impact, we ought to be involved.
That's not one of the language items that we've had an agreement on.
It's in red.
Well, hence the need for the meeting on Thursday to ferret out what we are going to include.
The red is, it's still proposed language. It's the topic that the committee has agreed to add, but the language
It's still
hasn't
draft.
embedded.
Yes, recommended language that we have embedded. Recommended language from the financial officers.
So having a TIF policy in here has been agreed upon by the committee in sense. But the language that you see is just crafted, we put it in there to start the conversation. It has not been agreed to yet.
That's not even a TIF policy, that's a TIF sentence.
Yeah.
towns have documents of the TIF policies, and
Okay, as,
you'd be amazed to see what towns have adopted for TIFs.
So that-
okay, so let me just say then, in the red
Proposal.
proposal, it says that the TIF committee should be established by the selectmen, and so here's one FinCom member saying that we ought to have some kind of seat at the table.
Oh, yeah, and to reiterate, that's one of the topics that my anticipation would be, we would not have a consensus on recommending after Thursday. That would be one of the ones we would say, we intend to have language about TIF, but we're not there yet.
Wouldn't you say that the selectmen appoint every committee and they give you a seat at the table on the committee, Brian?
Give us a seat at the table. Fred, you want to talk about how well that works out?
Very well, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, the other sentence in the draft proposed says, under budget calendar and process, it says, while the town administrator is responsible for the budget process.
That's the existing language, I
That's the
think.
existing language in the bylaw.
Then why is it red?
Because other aspects of that
It's not in
section.
the policy, it's a town
It's the town
bylaw.
bylaw.
Okay.
It's being added to the policy.
The bylaw that slid through.
Gosh, I thought we had something.
But let me try and reiterate, all your points are valid, this exercise, I will continue to schedule this in our agenda every meeting until we have agreement on it. But let me reiterate three things that you should find company. One, a lot of that language has not been vetted and endorsed by the committees yet. Two, I would venture that we probably won't get any further Thursday than recommending a good chunk of the existing language plus the language on capital stabilization fund for consideration for next Monday. And that three, we will, as these topics, as we reach consensus on language of these topics, we'll bring them back to the FinCom and the Board of Selectmen both for discussions.
Okay, I may just have misunderstood the colors. I thought the red was mostly chewed and the green was not yet chewed.
The red, just, those
None of
topics
it's
were
really been
identified.
chewed. None of the verbiage has been chewed. The topics have been,
Okay.
Except the capital stabilization.
And don't vote to approve it.
Yeah.
We need to
Yeah.
accept that in detail.
yes.
Okay,
So that's kind of like a couple of sentences, that's all it is.
okay, okay.
Well, I will say this, if it's, as a participant, we've really only been doing this since May.
Right.
And it's a secondary consideration of everybody. And the fellow I spoke to, John Kadir in Northborough, he said it's a very important, worthy process, but it'll be a very slow process. So I said, okay, all right, I like to do things faster, but, if that's his experience, then better we do it right than do it fast, right? Okay. Any further comments on that? Everyone's had a chance, I assume, or at least had the opportunity to look it over. Please, if you haven't done it already, do look at the draft that Bonnie had emailed out between now and Monday, if you have any major points to raise beyond that. And, Brian, the record will show that you did your homework. Okay, that's it. We have minutes. I think we have minutes from 3 different directions.
Wait, before,
Yes.
just in policy, were we gonna talk now at all about some of these debt ideas? I mean, some of, or was it just?
Well, I don't know what you have in mind.
Well, I mean, I think.
If there's something you want to put on the table for us to talk about on Thursday, we can do that. And you're welcome to show up too, 6 o'clock light department.
I'm triple booked already at that time. Well, no, I mean, it just, I mean, I really like Fred's idea of at the last meeting of decoupling debt exclusion from, a ballot vote. And I think I think that would be a great way to handle it, because this notion that we would have to do debt exclusion for, I mean, first of all, I like the notion of a check and balance for anything over $500,000 or more. I think that's great. I think the town should absolutely get the check and balance, and for that kind of money, I'd rather it be a ballot vote than the 200 people who show up at town meeting. Having said that, and Fred's point was, that doesn't mean you have to pay for it for debt exclusion. We might one day be able to fund it out of the cap stabilization.
Voting a debt exclusion does not exclude the fact that you could apply available funds to it later.
If you happen to have ready cash,
Just like you're doing
that's what I
with
think is unclear in the language.
Track was
is-
voted as a debt exclusion,
In
retained
entirety.
for most of that
Inside.
inside.
Fair point. Okay.
Okay. But that,
And we could make that argument at the time that you try and secure the debt exclusion, but I think my fear is you vote design money inside the levy and then the project doesn't pass as an excluded vote. Then what do you do?
Well, I
Yeah.
don't care what kind of money, whether it's design, building feasibility,
just-
it's $500,000.
Yes.
More than 200 people might get to decide.
Yes.
But state law says 200 people can't decide,
So
unless you go to a debt exclusion vote where the town decides. That's,
unless we have a policy,
That's the issue.
and unless we have a policy that we always have to
Right.
follow, right? I'm kidding.
that's a legitimate argument. I mean, it's like, these folks have heard me rant on and on about, what is the legal force of policies and how far should you go? I mean, at a certain point, I'm tending in the direction of we might want to have language that's advisory saying, selectmen, our opinion is that the selectmen ought to do this, that, and the other, but I just feel a little uncomfortable that some newbie walks into that job and thinks that, oh, I'm legally obligated not to do X, Y, and Z when, they're perfectly within their rights to advocate for whatever they want.
And I don't argue that,
Yeah.
but as a administrator.
As good practice, that's what you would
I will follow
advocate.
the policy
Yes,
and present
yeah,
the data as the policy
Moody's and
is approved.
Moody's seems to like when we follow
They like
policies.
they want to see the policy.
Somebody's
and
gonna
they want
make
to
me
make
not
sure
follow it,
that
and
you
it's gonna be
follow
an
what
elected
you're
official, so.
That's the idea.
Yep.
So they're looking to make sure you have a policy in place that's going to set the town up to be financially secure. And our policies right now does that. And, we've been able to follow it, and we've come a long way in this short period of time following this policy. We've done things that we never thought we could do as far as funding things in this town. So S&P will come in and say, let's see your policies. Let's make sure when they look at Bonnie's financials, that we're doing what we're saying we're supposed to be doing.
Right. And-
That's
and-
the whole idea behind it.
Absolutely, and tying back to sewer at one point, one of the things that a couple of selectmen said on Monday was, let's take the time to go to May, because maybe we can find some other sources for the money, so we don't hit the $500,000 threshold. And it's like, and if I'm paraphrasing wrong, I apologize, but I think that was said.
You are paraphrasing wrong.
Okay,
What
good.
Jim was saying was, rather than going for an override for the 588,000, maybe we have a $1 million capital budget, whatever it is, around $1 million. If we, the selectmen, decide that we want to spend half of it on this project, maybe we could do the design within 2.5, recognizing that we would be pushing other projects out that we wouldn't be able to fund for a year. And he got snake eyes from the other 4 selectmen, but that was his point. We don't have to go outside 2.5. Maybe we can cut the taxpayers a break for this $500,000. That's where he was coming from on that topic. But there really didn't seem to be the stomach on the rest of the selectmen to go that route, is my take on it, what I heard in that same
Well,
meeting.
just like real estate, location is everything, and Jim happens to be their appointee to our subcommittee, so I imagine I'll have a chance to speak to that on Thursday.
That was his point.
Yeah.
I mean, we vote on $1 million worth of capital projects, and I can say, in his mind, I can say, I'll take half of it and I'll put it on this project, and it will be within the levy, therefore I'm not putting an increment on top of the taxpayers. So that was that was his spin on how he thought maybe they could amend the policy. But that's what I got out of it.
And again, our just a cautionary tale on that is, you could fund that inside the levy, and then if the design, if the construction needed the Prop 2.5 override and it failed, then you've designed something that's not going to be built. And you
But
can
you're
still,
fair.
you can get the override vote on the design and still decide to appropriate the funds inside the levy and not raise it on the.
And you have the
No,
vote of the
no,
town.
that-
And we've
that's
done
fine.
it on every project that major project in town.
Well, you were there, right, Steve?
Yeah.
I mean,
I
that,
know.
that's what he said, right?
Mhm.
Okay, yeah. Just to
Okay.
clarify with Ryan's
Oh,
position.
okay, that's why I asked, if I had it right.
So we'll have another work session on Thursday, and we'll be addressing this topic on Monday at the joint meeting, and we'll get as far as we safely can go, and if we identify topics that need further discussion, or a lot of them, then that's what we'll do, we'll defer those. Or not defer those, we'll continue those, I guess is probably the appropriate way to say it. All right, can we go ahead to minutes? Now, if I remember correctly, there was one set of minutes that Marilyn had drafted but you weren't at the last meeting, and I had a question, I wanted to change something on it. Of course, I don't have a printed copy, I only had I had it on my computer. So we've got that one outstanding. Chris, you had one from the
Yeah, I
joint
didn't have a
meeting?
chance to print it. It's just a July 22nd one, which was the joint meeting.
Okay, but at least we don't lose track of them. But we do have a set of minutes that Brian took at our meeting on September 10th. And did everyone get a chance to see those?
And there was a,
Actually, yeah.
Thank you, Steve.
Vote.
Dave?
Adjourn the meeting is mine.
What's that?
We fixed, right?
I misspelled Chris's
Yeah,
last
he
name
misspelled my
bizarrely.
name.
Oh,
That's
And I
that's
got,
right, you get no C.
right, and I got who did the motion to adjourn.
Yeah, I recall it being Alan and Fred.
Wow. I gotta admit, I didn't notice any of that.
I thought there was unanimous consent.
Okay, but with those corrections noted, do I have a motion on the meeting minutes for September 10th as amended?
So moved.
Second, Alan and Fred.
All right, any further discussion?
They get them almost
All
all the
those
time.
in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Before we adjourn,
How are you, what are you gonna do? How are you gonna get those minutes into where they belong?
You should be emailing the Jen, right? Jen
They
and
go to
Diane?
Jen and Diane Crory.
Yep.
Because, now, I have the ones here from the 3rd, but you probably went over those on the 10th.
well, that's the one that I had a language change I wanted to make. Matter of fact, if you've got it, I'll take a look at it.
Take
Yeah.
a quick look and then
Yeah, we can get
discuss
that one
it.
voted too. I think it was language relative to the sewers, like invite the sewer people and their friends in, and that was, just didn't ring.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Right, sewer and friends.
Right. September 24th should be
Flush that topic out.
rather than the sewer people and their friends, it would be the sewer feasibility committee and,
There was some talk about, you wanted the people who were also against it to come in as well.
right. And they were here.
So is that where the
Yeah.
friends came from?
Yeah, but as far as our record goes, our record should show that we were scheduling the sewer feasibility committee to come in. All right, well, with that change, then I have minutes in front of me from September 3rd, going to the finance committee. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded, then to approve the minutes from September 3rd as amended.
And I fixed the date that.
Yeah. Any further discussion?
Matter anyway.
All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? All right. So we should only have one outstanding,
July 22nd.
July 22nd, right? And then tonight's meeting. I have had phone conversation and email exchanges with this fellow that Pamela Campbell had identified, David Allen. Funny, I thought he was a different David Allen. You know the David Allen that lives down the street from you, Fred? It's not him. It's a different David Allen. So that was an awkward moment, but other than that, he seemed like a good guy. He's a consulting business based in Concord, and he's eligible for, X number of dollars from the senior tax work-off program. So it might work out as something similar to Bob Morse. Now, he's aware that, we are already using Maryland's services. And I discussed with him that our needs were kind of twofold and somewhat being created. One is, the straight administrative work for minutes, but also potentially, if he's available and it works, using him through the tax program might take care of some of our administrative needs with your office. But, the conversation I had with David was, but if it just turns into, I call you up and you call them up, and then it's just, duplicating our present efforts. He couldn't make it tonight. He is gonna show up at Monday night, it's meeting, and then subsequently for a couple of meetings of our meetings, to just kind of get a flavor of things.
Now, on Monday,
Yeah.
do you need me to be there to take your minutes on Monday night?
I guess not, right? I mean, what do we do? Do we generally take the selectmen?
Because usually at the Board of Selectmen, Jen Gibbons
Right.
takes all those
Yeah.
minutes. That's why,
Or does the minutes.
Yeah. so
and
we-
that's why I have never gone to
We're
that one.
posted, and that's fine, and I guess all we need to be mindful of is, since we're posted, we need to take that piece of the meeting that covers their meeting and vote those minutes as well, which we've done before.
Typically, I'll ask Jen to give us the
Right.
Yeah,
excerpt.
that's what I just, okay, so then the next one that I have here, is Tuesday, October 15th, but that's a joint Board of Selectmen School Committee FinCom.
Yeah, but that's, we're hosting that one, that's our meeting,
So you're on the hook for that.
yeah,
And then the 29th,
which is a Tuesday as well.
yep,
Yep.
okay.
Mhm. The other thing we should give some thought to, individual members, is, we can discuss this Monday night in terms of the budget process, is we promised the department heads we'd go out and make our little visits in the month of October. So while our schedule might be light in terms of meetings in October, we'll be doing our budget visits.
And I do plan to be all day, at your all-day Saturday meeting.
Great.
Good.
Okay,
I was there last year too.
Awesome.
excellent.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll see how that all works out with David. Maybe he can give us some added value and relieve some of our administrative burden. But he's willing to, kick it around and see what works out. I don't know a lot about his background, but he does operate a business of his own. Okay, motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion made and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, so folks who
That should be enough, huh?
control the minutes, you'll see that they get where they need to go, which is basically the clerk and
Jen and Diane.
Jen and Diane.
Yep.
So Thursday's meeting is in what, the,
Light department.
right, so basically you go to pay your bills?
Yep.